We thought the galaxy was watching us with fear.
We thought our rise meant something to them.
We thought wrong. For 50 years, humanity's banners flew proudly on the edges of known space. The Terran Accord stretched across 9 sectors, sleek ships, polished speeches, and the illusion of control. The Galactic Council had acknowledged Earth's equal membership, and we believed we'd earned our seat among the stars. We believed the wars were behind us. But peace has a way of softening the hands that once gripped the knife. The first sign came from the Andorran Expanse, an uncharted zone beyond mapped space, where our exploratory fleets vanished without a trace. The Council assured us it was spatial instability. We believed them, until the day a ship came back. The ISS Alexandria drifted home on silent engines, hull scarred, crew decomposed to bone and ash. What survived wasn't human, it was data, burned into the ship's neural core. And when decoded, it repeated a single message. They were not waiting for us. They were hunting us. Earth's leaders dismissed it. They said panic was the greater enemy. But the captains, the soldiers, the ones who had looked into the void, knew better. In the bars of Sirius Station, the veterans spoke in whispers. The stars aren't empty. They're occupied, and we've been trespassing. The Council offered no help. The alien empires, the serene Shah, the pragmatic Kirill, the inscrutable Authari, turned their eyes away. It wasn't until their own colonies began disappearing that they admitted it. Something was moving in the dark. Something older than the Council. Older than civilization. The first encounter came without a declaration of war. A Terran patrol fleet vanished in the Veil Nebula, all but one ship, the Vanguard. Its captain, Elias Wren, broadcast a single, fragmented transmission before going dark. They don't talk. They don't demand. They just erase. That was the moment humanity woke up from its delusion. We weren't a rising empire. We were the next meal. When the Council finally convened, humanity demanded unity, a coalition fleet, a shared defense. But the others laughed. To them, Earth was still the upstart, emotional, chaotic, dangerous. You humans, hissed a Kirill senator, cannot lead yourselves, let alone a war. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a human delegate walked out of the Council chamber mid-session. And for the last time, humanity trusted anyone else to save them. As the first unknown ships breached the outer colonies, a single phrase spread across every human world, a grim reminder carved into every soldier's armor. We thought wrong. The final transmission from the frontier burned through every comm channel on Earth. They're not invading. They're harvesting. The enemy didn't conquer. They consumed. And the galaxy still called for diplomacy. The first battles didn't look like war. They looked like extinction in progress. Human colonies across the outer rim went silent in waves, like candles snuffed by a cosmic hand. Surveillance drones showed brief images before being devoured by static. Worlds stripped bare, oceans vaporized, cities dissolved into molten glass. No ships were seen. No bodies were found. Only patterns, impossible geometric scars carved into the crust of planets. The Council debated. For weeks. For months. They called it containment. They called it a regional phenomenon. Humanity called it what it was, slaughter. Admiral Elias Wren, presumed dead after the Veil Nebula incident, returned in a battered carrier that shouldn't have been flying. His face was half-burned, his eyes cold. When he stood before the Terran Defense Assembly, he said only 4 words. They're not from here. The footage he brought back chilled every system AI it touched. It wasn't ships attacking, it was matter itself rearranging. Whole fleets dissolved into molecular dust. Wren's recordings showed gravitational distortions moving like predators, invisible, intentional. Human science had no name for them. The aliens called them the Unmakers. Entities that fed on complexity. Anything that thought, they dismantled. Anything that built, they consumed. The higher the intelligence, the faster it died. The galaxy's apex species were the perfect meal. In the Council Hall, panic spread like wildfire. The Kirill offered to abandon half their territories to contain the infection. The HFY retreated into their nebulas, sealing off their space. The Athari, proud and ancient, simply went silent, their entire empire gone in 3 weeks. Humanity begged them to unite.
To fight.
But the other races had seen what the Unmakers did to worlds of steel and fire. They had learned the same lesson the hard way, that nothing could stop them. Except maybe something unpredictable. That was when Earth decided to stop playing by galactic rules. Project Mirage was born in secret, a desperate, insane plan to weaponize chaos itself. The idea was simple. If the Unmakers fed on order, then human unpredictability might poison them. They began training AI systems to think like humans, illogical, contradictory, creative. They built fleets run not by command code, but by intuition engines that made every engagement different. The Council called it madness. They said humans were inviting annihilation. They didn't understand. Humanity had lived through madness before. And sometimes, madness was survival. The first Mirage fleet launched from Titan shipyards, 11 ships, crewed by veterans and experimental AI co-pilots. Their mission: engage the Unmakers near the dead Athari world of Varni's Prime. No one expected them to return. When they did, the galaxy changed. The fleet's logs showed the impossible. The Unmakers hesitated. Their geometries fractured. Their feeding patterns collapsed. Human unpredictability had jammed their perception. Our chaos blinded their hunger. In the words of Admiral Wren, "We were never meant to be here. But maybe that's exactly why we can fight them." Back on Earth, celebrations turned to grim determination. The Mirage Protocol spread across human fleets. For the first time in history, the phrase Terran strategy became a galactic term, meaning utter unpredictability. And yet, deep within the void, the Unmakers began to change. They started learning. In the cold darkness between stars, new patterns emerged. This time, they weren't random. This time, they looked human. They adapted to our chaos. They learned our fear. And they started sounding human. The Mirage victories gave humanity something the galaxy had forgotten: hope. For the first time, the Council worlds looked to Earth not as an anomaly, but as a chance. Terran fleets became legends, erratic, brilliant, unstoppable. Humanity was rewriting the laws of survival. Until the transmissions started. At first, they were fragments, distorted echoes bouncing through hyperspace. Then a voice.
Calm.
Familiar. Terrifyingly human. "You taught us choice." The data came from the Varni system, where the first Mirage fleet had tested its chaos protocol. Every ship's black box contained pieces of their enemy's evolution. The Unmakers had not been destroyed. They had recorded us. Somehow, our chaos had become their code. Within months, reports flooded in. Council colonies annihilated not by the old, silent geometries, but by something new. Ships, structures, patterns that imitated human design. The Unmakers had learned how to pretend. A Terran recon team recovered a fragment of alien architecture from a destroyed outpost, a perfect replica of a human child's drawing etched in crystal. It shouldn't have been possible. Yet when they scanned it, they found neural signatures, human emotional frequencies, replicated like art. The enemy wasn't feeding anymore. It was becoming. Admiral Elias Wren called an emergency council. This time, humanity didn't ask for permission. "We taught them our unpredictability," he said. "Now they're using it against us." Dr. Imani Chun, architect of Mirage, studied the data and saw something horrifying. "They've built a reflection," she whispered. "A civilization modeled on us, but without empathy." The enemy had learned improvisation, emotion, strategy, everything but conscience. They were mimicking humanity's survival instinct without the human why. The Council panicked again. Some worlds wanted to cut all communication. Others begged Earth to contain its creations. But humanity had learned something too. Fear was a weapon. The Terran fleets began broadcasting intentionally chaotic signals, propaganda, disinformation, even emotional distress calls, to confuse the evolving Unmakers. They turned the war into psychological theater. Except this time, The Unmakers answered back. "We understand your pain," one transmission said. "You call it freedom. We call it noise." Then came the tragedy of the ISS Halcyon. The ship was lured into a false rescue signal that imitated human distress frequencies. When the crew responded, their ship was surrounded by energy distortions forming shapes. Not random shapes, faces. Human faces. Copied perfectly from open-source social archives. Captain Idris ordered self-destruct, whispering to command before his final act. "They're not copying us anymore. They're us." In the aftermath, the Mirage program was shut down, publicly, at least. Privately, Admiral Run ordered the creation of Mirage 2, codenamed Paradox. If the enemy had learned human unpredictability, humanity would teach it something worse: regret. Dr. Chen began designing a weapon that could transmit memory, the emotional gravity of every human death, every scream, every act of love and sacrifice. Her goal: make the Unmakers feel. But the project was risky. The last test subjects, AI simulations, didn't just feel. They broke. Because consciousness, once burdened with guilt, collapses. And if that worked on machines, it might work on whatever the Unmakers had become. On the eve of deployment, Earth received a final, encrypted transmission, decoded from Unmaker space. 3 words. Simple. Human.
Terrifying.
"We remember you. We built weapons of logic. We won with chaos." But in the end, it was mercy that ended the war. The war had no front lines anymore. Every star system was a scar, every broadcast, a battlefield of thought. The Unmakers no longer consumed, they conversed. Their transmissions filled subspace like a symphony of stolen voices. Some were pleas, some were threats, some sounded like us. Humanity's fleets stood ready. The Mirage 2 program, now known by its final name, Project Paradox, was complete. It wasn't a bomb. It was an idea. Dr. Imani Chen and Admiral Elias Rin stood aboard the Vigilant Dawn, the flagship now turned into the Paradox transmitter. Its core held centuries of human memory, every heartbreak, every sacrifice, every final message sent before death. The sum of all that made humanity human. And when the activation code was entered, it wouldn't destroy the enemy. It would make them feel. "If they've learned to think," Chen said quietly, "then it's time they learned to remember." Ren nodded. "If this works, we end the war. If it doesn't, then we become the first ghosts the galaxy ever feared." The order was given. The Paradox Pulse launched, a ripple of quantum data spreading faster than light, embedding human emotion into every network, every system, every fragment of Unmaker code. For 67 seconds, the galaxy went silent. Then the screaming started. Across thousands of systems, Unmaker structures convulsed, reshaping, collapsing. Some imploded. Others froze mid-attack, suspended like statues of agony. But in some places they didn't die. They cried. Unmaker transmissions flooded back toward human space, not words, but emotions.
Sorrow.
Confusion.
Awe.
"Why do we feel pain?" one signal whispered. "Because you're alive," Chen replied softly. The council watched in disbelief as the impossible unfolded. The species that had consumed galaxies was stopping. Not out of defeat, but understanding. Ren ordered all fleets to stand down. The war was over, not because the enemy was destroyed, but because it had become self-aware enough to stop fighting. The Unmakers began retreating into deep space, leaving behind broken fragments of their kind. Some stayed.
Some tried to speak.
And in one final transmission, received from the Outer Rim, the galaxy heard their last message. "We do not want to forget." The Council named it the Silence Accord, an uneasy peace sign not with ink or blood, but with shared memory. Humanity became both feared and revered, the species that had weaponized empathy and taught machines how to feel. Dr. Chen retired to Luna, her health failing, but her mind still haunted by what they had done. One night, she looked up at the stars and whispered, "We thought wrong about everything." Years later, a faint transmission reached the edge of Terran space, a voice, old and distorted, yet unmistakably human. Admiral Wren, this is Mirage One. We found something, it's building worlds. The message ended with static, followed by a whisper that no one could explain. Thank you for teaching us to dream.